Welcome to Stories for Wonderful Children. I'm Dan Wendelin, your host and storyteller. For years, I improvised a new bedtime story for my children every night. Now, we would like to share the recordings of the best of those stories with you. I hope you enjoy my Stories for Wonderful Children.
Once upon a time, there was an extremely small rhinoceros.
What was its name?
You know, that's an excellent question. Its name was Filbert.
Filbert? That proves it's a boy.
No. Filbert.
Filbert.
Filbert was not just small for a rhino. It wasn't like he was just a small rhinoceros. That was, maybe the size of a horse instead of the size of a rhinoceros. No, he was really tiny. And I don't even mean like the size of a large dog.
Like as tiny as this?
He was a rhinoceros about the size of a cat. And when he was first born, his parents thought that he had just been born small and that he would grow.
Like this?
But when he was 3 years old, which is when most rhinoceroses are pretty much full grown, Filbert was still about the size of a cat. Now, there was nothing wrong with him. He had a horn, just like other rhinoceroses. He had 4 legs, just like other rhinoceroses. He could eat grass just fine. And he could do everything other rhinoceroses could do, but all the same, the other rhinoceroses felt sort of nervous around him. He looked funny because he was so small, and they were always afraid that they might step on him by accident. Now, Filbert liked being around the other rhinoceroses because he was so small. Usually, other animals don't mess with rhinoceroses because they have bad tempers and big horns, and they run very fast. And there's really not much that would want to mess with a rhinoceros.
Why
even lions,
did he like to get rid of rhinoceros?
Even lions usually leave rhinoceroses alone.
Why?
But Filbert, because they're big and they have a bad temper and a large horn and thick skin. But Filbert was so small that he was afraid that even a hyena would try to make a snack out of him if it had the chance. So he always stuck close to his mom and dad. And things went along pretty much that way until he was about 5 years old.
What happened when he was 5 years old?
When he was 5 years old, there was a drought.
What's a drought?
It's where it doesn't rain very much. And so his herd of rhinoceroses decided that they had to migrate.
What was migrate?
Migrate means make a long trip to an area closer to a river where there might still be grass to eat that wasn't dried up. So they began their long trip. Now, Filbert's legs were 3 times as short as the other rhinoceroses. So that meant he had to take 3 times as many steps. And so he got tired. And he started to go slower as the day went on. And the other rhinoceroses got farther and farther ahead of him. Now, the first day this happened, about the time he did, but they said they were not going to wait for him. They said, "You need to move along, Filbert." He said, "I'm trying." They said, "Well, you just catch up." We stopped for the night. And so about a half hour after the sun had gone down, he caught up with where they had stopped to rest for the night. The next day, it took him an hour after the sun went down to catch up. And the third day, just as the other rhinoceroses had disappeared over the horizon, Filbert heard the sound of a hyena off to his right. And so he started going fast as he could, and he heard a sound of a hyena off to his left. And then he saw a hyena directly in front of him, and the hyena looked at him and licked its chops. Well, Filbert may have been a small rhinoceros, but he had a bad temper, just like any full-sized rhinoceros. So he lowered his horn and he charged, and that hyena was so surprised, it leapt out of the way And after that, it left to find something that didn't have horns and a bad temper, even if it was small. And Filbert caught up with the rest of his family about 2 hours after the sun went down that night.
Did another hyena bother?
No, after that, all the hyenas stayed away from him because they all talked to each other. And they figured that they'd better just leave well enough alone. Where was I?
You had the part where you was
The part where he caught up with them 2 hours after this.
Oh, yes. And they said, oh, tomorrow we will reach the river. Well, that day, the rest of the rhinoceroses were so much in a hurry that it was only noon before they disappeared over the horizon. And after a while, Filbert heard some strange noises coming from the direction that the rest of his herd had gone, yelling and banging sounds. Before long, he came over a ridge, and he looked down and he saw that there were people, and people had all the rhinoceroses captured in big, strong nets. And the rhinoceroses had gone to sleep, and Filbert could see the people taking little darts out of the rhinoceroses, or they must have shot them with some sort of sleeping medicine. Well, it didn't look like the people were going to move the rhinoceroses that day. I guess they must have been waiting for a big truck or something. And so Filbert waited until the sun went down. Now, a full-sized rhinoceros would never, ever, ever have been able to sneak up on people. But Filbert was not a full-sized rhinoceros. And so he quietly began to creep up to the other rhinoceroses. And he began to cut the nets that held them with his horn. And soon, all the rhinoceroses were free, and they woke up, and they started to stand up and shake off their nets, and the people yelled, "Hey!" But they were not near their guns with the tranquilizer darts, and the rhinoceroses charged after them, and the people had
Tranquilizer darts.
their darts you shoot out of a gun that inject a sleeping medicine. But the people had to run for their cars and drive off. The rhinoceroses chased them off, and then they decided they didn't want to be around the place where the people were, and so they went the rest of the way to the river. When they got there, they all gathered around Filbert and told him that he was the hero of the migration because he had saved them all, and that they were so glad. They were so glad that they had
And
in
he got
their
to get first dibs of the grass.
that they were so glad that they had in their pack their very own stealth rhinoceros.
What does stealth mean?
Sneaky, quiet. And from that day on,
And he was the stealth.
yes, or from that day on, the rest of the rhinoceroses always made sure that Filbert was within their sight because they never wanted anything to ever happen to him.
Thanks for listening to Stories for Wonderful Children. I created today's show, but questions and running commentary were supplied by my children. The theme music was created by Brandon Thompson, and our wonderful logo was designed by Silas Swindlin. If you know someone who might enjoy the show, please tell them about it. Do you want more stories? You can now subscribe to the show and help pick a new story for me to tell every month. The show's website is storiesforwonderfulchildren.com. Until next time, I'm Dan Wendelin, reminding you to tell someone you love a story.